Good afternoon and welcome to the Football Outsiders live stream for Wednesday, August 10th, 2022. Special live stream today. We're doing Wednesday instead of Tuesday. I want to welcome everybody watching on Twitch and YouTube. Please feel free to ask us questions and make comments during the show. Hello to everybody listening after the fact on the Football Outsiders Podcast Network. I am Aaron Schatz, Editor-in-Chief of Football Outsiders, joined today by Mike Tanier and Robert Weintraub, who is the author of 2 chapters in Football Outsiders Almanac 2022, and we're going to get into those 2 chapters today, and that is the Cincinnati Bengals and the Baltimore Ravens. It's AFC North Day on the Football Outsiders live stream. We're going to start with our question of the day. So our question of the day for the viewers and the readers, which is, which new offensive lineman will have the biggest impact in Cincinnati? Ted Karras, Alex Cappa, or La'el Collins? Rob, what's your thought? As our resident Bengals fan, which of those 3 guys is the most impact?
I mean, that's just like, it's a great choice. Like going to the ice cream parlor and having, all the flavors set out in front of you. You just can't choose which one is most delicious because they're all just such upgrades over what they were trotting out last year. When people have asked me this so far, I've leaned toward La'el Collins at right tackle because right tackle's the bigger, more important position of the 3. He has the sort of highest ceiling of the 3. When he's healthy and ready to go, he's a real difference maker. And he's just back to practice today. I believe he's been cleared. So if we want to tie that into a slight news peg, what passes for 1 in August anyway, we'll go with him. All 3, though, are obviously significant upgrades. And given the way the middle of the line was collapsing in, certainly in the later parts of the season and in the playoffs on Joe Burrow, you could certainly make a case for Karras or Kappa or Collins. A lot of hard sounds in there. Going to have to get used to that. A little tongue twister action. But I would go with stick with Collins, but you could definitely make a case that the center position has been, all 3 positions have been kind of a wasteland, right? Right guard, center, and right tackle for quite some time in Cincinnati. I guess Richie Braham is the last time they had a center really, even top-notch quality, or not even talking all pro level, but just a guy you can rely upon week in and week out. Certainly, we're hoping that's what the Bengals are getting in Karras. He has the lineage. He has the Super Bowl rings to prove it. Nothing but raves about him so far from camp, about his professionalism and the way he brings it every practice, every play of every practice, just what Bill Belichick talked about when he was asked about Karras and what he brings, that kind of stuff. And Kappa, of course, is a guy who also has great button lines and looks like he's going to fit the bill for what they need at right guard, which is also just a horrible empty vacuum on that Bengal line for some time now. So all 3 are going to be important. I'll lean Collins for now, but you can talk me out of it at some point as the season approaches, and we'll see who stays healthiest. Really is what's going to make the big difference.
Well, up until a couple of hours ago, the story was we're waiting for La'el Collins. And up until about a week or so ago, we were waiting for Alex Kappa because he was limited. And the story was all about Karras coming in, like you said, the leadership, the professionalism, the Patriots' heritage and everything, ready to play at the center position. So right now, I'm leaning with the guy who's been there and has already made the contribution at center over the guys that we're still sort of waiting to see, take on their roles.
I mean,
that was long term, but you're right. I mean, for the immediacy of what they're getting done in practice. And let's remember, they've been practicing without Joe Burrow this whole time. So, there's a sort of, whatever the practice is worth is sort of take it with a grain of salt anyway. Anybody wants to see my appendectomy scar that I got in sympathy with Joe, available for a later podcast, live stream, whatever we're calling this today. But you're right. I mean, there's certainly, who's been out there doing it the most so far this summer. That is Karras, no question about it.
And I mean, the offensive line is the best reason to believe that the Bengals are going to be better this year, certainly. The story about the Bengals, and we talk about this in the chapter in the book, is that by our numbers, at least, they really were an average team during the regular season. And then they went on the great run in the playoffs. I mean, not just close wins, but playing well in the playoffs. So overall, we have them improving from where they were in DVOA last year, but the idea is that it won't look as good because they won't have as much luck in close games and the schedule is harder. And I'll point out, by the way, I mean, they're only slightly above average, which I know that's shocking for a team that's coming off a Super Bowl appearance, but they're only slightly above average of the projections. If you update the projections to say that Deshaun Watson will be back in week 7, which, I don't know, who knows, right? But if he is, the Bengals go from the 6th hardest schedule in the league to the number 1 hardest schedule in the league because they would have to play Deshaun Watson twice.
So it's a little bit in flux right now because of that, because
yeah,
all those division games are later in the schedule for the Bengals.
Yeah. The one thing you can lean on is the fact that if basically the lone team that Baker Mayfield was good against was Cincinnati. So, I'm still taking the wait and see approach on Deshaun Watson. He can't play any better than Baker did against the Bengals, for God's sakes. I mean, obviously he's the much, much better player, but that's me whistling past the graveyard a little bit, but I'll take it for now.
I think that's part of it, like what Aaron was talking about last year, about that sort of average, slightly above average, maybe Bengals team for most of the year. Yeah, I remember games against the Browns, where you kind of march down the field. And that was one march down the field, pick 6 the other way. That was this Bengals-Browns game. And all these other
99 yards, Denzel Ward, absolutely.
Yeah. And all these things that would happen that would indicate that, those of us watching the Bengals October, November, like, okay, Burrow's good, Chase is amazing. They're not done yet. They're not done cooking yet. And that was the impression we got from most of last year.
Yeah. Right. And they did improve. I was going to say they did improve in the second half of the season. Usually that kind of stuff doesn't tend to carry over, but there is a good argument that when you're talking about young players getting in sync, it does. And especially the offense improved. Like they were 23rd in DVOA through week 9. Then weeks 11 to 17, they were 6th.
Right. And we point out in the book, there's a lot of different factors there. Partially, DVOA doesn't love the way the Bengals played for various little detailed reasons. Didn't factor in the penalties and the big plays. The boomer bust style is not, something that DVOA loves. We've covered this on previous chats that we've had and things like that. And also, I don't think there's any doubt about it that Joe Burrow himself took somewhere up to half the season to really get back to being what Joe Burrow was when he was coming out of college originally after that knee injury. And, he was out there, he was playing still decent at worst football, but he wasn't the same player until, the comfort really got back to where it was. And you could see the difference. It was pretty noticeable for anybody who watched him all season. So that was a big part of it too. And, listen, every stat you can take with a grain of salt. Some stats worshipped Burrow and the Bengals, and those were a little bit over the top too. They didn't necessarily factor in sacks and things like that. So if you have to always put the recipe together with all these stats and to get a much more accurate portrayal of the team. I don't think anybody who was watching the Bengals, including myself, in certainly October or November, imagined them as a Super Bowl team by any stretch. We were just hoping to make the playoffs, and magic carpet rides happen, and that's what the Bengals went on. They definitely were a lad in January of this past year.
I would point out one of the reasons why our projections are always so conservative is that they price in the possibility of injuries by being built on all teams in the past, including teams where a number of stars got injured and the team collapsed, as a possibility, right, in the range of possibilities. Right. And when you look at
that team later, by the way.
I mean, Burrow, obviously, you lose your quarterback, that'd be terrible. But you look at the rest of the offense also, there's not a lot of depth here. Like, they are really dependent on those 3 wide receivers. Right. If one of those 3 guys, Chase, Higgins, or Boyd, were to get injured, there is like nothing behind them.
Yeah, I mean, that's been a big talking point all really since the season ended. Chase was the first round pick, I think, since 2013, 2015. I can't remember the date now, but he was the first one to make it through the entire season unscathed in Cincinnati. So, everybody took that as like, well, okay, this is a special season. The Bengals' first round pick actually played the entire way. Amazing. And, the fact that he was so good was just a cherry on top. But you're right. The fact that, Higgins and Chase together is such a devastating combo, and then you can go with Boyd reliable underneath. it's hard to match that top three, but in most cases, when you have that kind of frontline, excellence, what's behind it is often not nearly the case. They've had a couple of guys play decently in camp. They're very high on Kwame Lassiter, who's a rookie, undrafted free agent. But let's be real. This time of year, every team talks up guys like that. Yeah. So right now, you're looking at Michael Thomas, who's been around the league a while and is a guy they like, but is not really a difference maker. And Stanley Morgan, who they play a lot, but is a blocking wide receiver. He's almost like a tight end in a wide receiver's jersey number. So they have those two guys who are going to fill in, and they'll play. And the idea is that Burrow will make them into something a little bit better, maybe than their natural talent. But obviously, as you point out, teams built around the passing game, and they're built around star wide receivers. And if any one, or God forbid, multiple ones go down for any length of time, they're screwed. But you can say that about a lot of teams in a lot of positions. Yeah. So
but there's no one here like Isaiah McKenzie for the Bills or Brashad Perriman and now Julio Jones for the Buccaneers, where the fourth and fifth guys are have some history, right?
And most teams, you can say, well, yeah, if they lose their best offensive non-quarterback player, they're in trouble. But there's these other paths to greatness. You can take Stephon Diggs away from the Bills and say, oh, this team can win with defense, and they can win with Josh Allen's legs, and McKenzie can step up. And you can do that with a lot of the other contenders. If you take Jamar Chase out of the equation for the Bengals, you have an unbelievably ordinary team that you can't picture doing more than just sort of hanging around.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, I think they think that internally. I mean, I think they're aware of that, and they've gone heavily on the defense for just that reason to, think to themselves, all right, yes, we are. And they've historically always been built around passing combinations that are elite, but we have to find a way to win when it's not working. And in the playoffs, that's what they did. They won those playoff games, not particularly with
the defense really stepped it up in the playoffs. The defense was much better.
Special teams, won those games for them. And I think, is it going to be a case where that's going to be their new identity? No question. No, definitely not. But when it's not working, or if Chase, has to go and miss a game or two, obviously a devastating injury is another conversation. But if, he's only out for a week or two, I mean, T. Higgins missed a couple weeks last year. It wasn't, completely detrimental to the offense. So they can find ways to win in other ways if the defense continues the upward trajectory they've been on. We'll see if that actually happens. And obviously with the offensive line improvements, maybe the running game takes another step forward. I think they're certainly aware of the idea that just being a team based completely around Burrow to Chase, Burrow to Higgins, and if they're not open, Burrow to Boyd, is not sustainable. So hopefully they'll find a little bit more diversity to that attack.
Yeah, the defense is interesting to talk about because it got talked up a lot in the playoffs. And they did. I mean, they were a top 10 defense in the playoffs, but that's top 10 defense out of 14 teams, not out of 13 teams, right? They, they were better in the playoffs. There was a lot of talk about our Anarumo and his quality of his scheming, and he did. I mean, did something by dropping everybody against the Patrick Mahomes that made Patrick Mahomes essentially forget how to play football for a half. Wild, but there was also I felt like in the playoffs there was a lot of overstatement of how good the Bengals defense was, and particularly the pass rush, which was a little bit below average in pretty much every stat. They were 25th in ESPN's pass rush win rate. They were 19th in adjusted sack rate. They were 22nd in pressure rate from SIS. So, and it's basically the same guys this year, except for the addition of Joseph Osai, who is a really good prospect who was injured for his rookie year and does have a lot of promise. But, they had some guys last year who had particularly good years compared to their histories, like Eli Apple and Chidobe Awuzie, and you don't quite know if they can keep that up. And is Jesse Bates practicing, or is he holding out with the franchise?
At the moment, he's not. He's holding out. But is that he'll be back in time to play.
That front office has one job. Well, it had two jobs. Fix the offensive line. It did that. Take care of Jesse Bates. How hard is this to do? You've got cap space going into the future to the moon. Take care of Jesse Bates. It's so simple.
It doesn't make a ton of sense to me. Maybe the naming rights that they just sold for the stadium provide them with a little incoming dough that they can shunt over to Jesse. I don't know. It's just a guaranteed dollars chasm that they're not willing to cross, and they're spooked by the fact that they're going to have to pay Burrow and Chase and Higgins relatively soon down that line. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm just saying this is
right.
That's how the Bengals do it. That's how they do it.
They did draft a safety in the first round,
and
so they
drafted a safety.
But they still need to get this year out of Bates.
Oh yeah, no doubt about that. Listen, I mean, the entirety of football, you always talk about how do you team build? You draft a guy, develop him. He's one of your own. He becomes a all-pro level player, and you keep him for as long as he's valuable. And that's sort of, it makes no sense that you would get rid of him in his prime like this. He has been a little up and down over the years. It's not like he's stepped in and has been, top of the line safety every game, every year. But he definitely played his best down the stretch, and in the playoffs, he was fantastic. That's what you want from guys, right? They play their best in big games, and he's finally kind of mastered the Anarumo scheme that you alluded to earlier. Aaron, it doesn't make a ton of sense to me that they would, think that anybody really is going to step in. But, Dax Hill's a good prospect. I'm sure he can play, and he'll play multiple positions. There's no reason why Bates and Hill couldn't play together. But, we'll see how it plays out. I just think they've sort of looked around the landscape and said, all right, well, we're not going to be able to give Jesse what his guaranteed dollars or agents are demanding, and they're set to move on after this year. But he has to play this year. All indications are that he will. He's not going to leave on the table and just sit out. That doesn't seem the kind of guy he is. It doesn't make prudent financial sense. Players virtually never do that. So he should play, and he'll be the same Jesse Bates that he always has been for lack of any evidence otherwise.
Yeah, I will, by the way, just point out that looking at the safeties for the Bengals, I did not realize that the Bengals have 2 of the 3 Michael Thomases.
Yes, they do.
So they're loading up on Michael Thomases, except for the really good one.
You never know what happens. An injury to Chase, the Saints fall out of the race, and suddenly maybe Jesse Bates.
You got all the Michael Thomases.
Yes. Yeah.
Get them all, baby.
The one that matters. The one that matters, by the way, is healthy and practicing right now, which is the thing I assumed was not going to happen.
It's definitely an upset there. Yeah, they have a history of this where at one point the Bengals had like 5 different Johnsons on the team, and everybody was like, "Wait, which Johnson is that now?"
The Jets. Look at the Jets right now.
The Jets have 2 Michael Carters, and then they have like Breece Hall and Bryce Hall.
2 Q Williamses, who are brothers, but they're still 2 Q Williamses. That's on his family. That's on mom and dad. But
you had some props. That's Mike.
I got the props here. Okay. And I always do these on the ones that are the big payout props. So are you interested in the Cincinnati Bengals? This is an alternate line, folks. Bengals over 11 wins at plus 225. Any takers? Pretty good, right?
Yeah. I mean, if we're saying they're improved, they were 10-7 last year, and they weren't great.
You got to make this decision. That line will change when Deshaun Watson is suspended for a year.
Yeah,
it will move that money line or that line. So,
I was going to say, if Deshaun Watson is only suspended for 6 games, I don't want that.
Well, who says he should be suspended for a year? Roger Goodell. You know whose decision this is? Roger Goodell.
Some New Jersey attorney general or something, right?
Some dude that Roger Goodell picked to make the decision for Roger Goodell.
Yeah, I'm on the Trevor Bauer train. If Trevor Bauer goes for 2 years, Deshaun should go for 2 years or 3. Yeah. Just keep suspending him until he's no longer a threat to the Bengals.
Yeah, if there's one person that I'm guessing that Roger Goodell never pays any attention to, it's Rob Manfred. The NFL is king and baseball is not doing particularly good right now. So I don't know if he could feel like he can learn any lessons from Manfred.
There's a pebble under Roger Goodell's loafer, no question.
I mean, plus 225 is a nice payout for a team that was 10-7 last year.
Yeah.
And we're saying they're improved. The offensive line's better. The guys are in the system now, and
they're improved, but they're not going to have the same luck, and they're going to have a harder schedule. But
most likely,
it's a nice payout. I might be tempted.
All right,
if Joe Burrow is Joe Burrow, if he is what everyone thinks he is and what he has displayed, I mean, then he should be in the double-digit win mix every year, regardless, pretty much, right? So, I mean, they might not have the same luck as they did last year injury-wise, but they had some bad luck in other ways too. So they could have squeezed.
Unless your defense is as bad as the Saints' defense was for a couple of years, and Drew Brees couldn't get them out of the losing record. But for the most part, if you're a quarterback this good, you have a winning record every year.
Yeah. Well, I'm guessing there will be no takers at another alternate money line here. Under 9 wins for the Bengals at plus 130. Under 9.
I mean, our simulation says to go with that because our simulation is super conservative.
Yeah, I think that's our conservatism, though. Not.
And then you're just rooting for injuries. I mean, that's basically what that boils down to. If you take that bet, it's not impossible, obviously.
It's plus 130. I actually would have expected that to be a little higher, and I probably would take it if it was like 170 or 180.
Yeah.
Again, maybe when the Watson suspension's official, we will get more knowledge about this. Here's something. Jamar Chase to have at least one 200-plus receiving yard game. Plus 450. Plus 450. I'll give you the other one like this.
Okay.
Joe Burrow to have at least one 500-yard passing game. We had one last year. At least one 500-yard passing game. Plus 900.
Wow.
Come on. That's
there are like 2 of those a year, right? Like how
there's
many?
Like 1 or 2 a year. That's why I looked it up, and like there's 1 or 2 across the league per year. So that's got to be worth about 200 check beardos here, guys. Come on.
500. The 500-yard passing game did come against the Ravens when they were down to Larry Moe and Curley in the secondary. There's a bit of I'd stay away from the 500, but Jamar getting 200, I would think that that's in the realm of possibility. Just a standard game, and he breaks off one slant, takes it to the house from 80. You're getting close to it right there. I'd go in for the Jamar one.
I'm going to see if I can parlay those, Brian.
Brian says, can you parlay them? Because if Burrow has 500, you got to figure Chase is going to have 200.
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't think I can get the parlays turned on right now. I will look into that, but that would be because that's a 1-2 punch that you could really hit. And by the way, just a point, those 500-yard games throughout history, not the Ravens game, most of them are losses, as you might expect. Those are big catch-up games. Like Jared Goff had one a couple of years ago. Roethlisberger late in his career when he was noodle arm, Roethlisberger had one. It's usually you're down, 46-28 final score where you're throwing to play catch-up. But I like them both because it's like every week, choose violence, choose chaos. Go in there and root for Bengals madness. Don't care about the final score, just catches all year long.
Yeah, there's going to be some games where it's just, pick a game that they play this year. They're going to have a couple of shootout potentially, especially with Mahomes, the rematch there. There's going to be some afternoons where it's just the defense can't handle either one of these guys, and they're going to both put up a ton of yards and a ton of points. And you might get lucky with those bets for sure.
It certainly would be a fun thing to root for.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what props like this are good for. The Bengals are on TV. I have this year-long prop. Just sit back and root for touchdowns, root for yards, root for catches. It's fun.
Is there a Hayden Hurst prop in there?
There probably is. You guys talk while I hunt it down.
A 30. Will he get over 32 yards?
Probably not. Will Hayden Hurst have a 200-yard game? I'm guessing that's definitely not a problem.
Will he have 200 yards for the season? But he will, I think.
He will have that. I mean, Drew Sample doesn't really catch passes, so it's not like they're going to be throwing to him.
He's hurt. He's already
there is no. I'm afraid there's no Hayden Hurst.
Damn.
At this time, there's a couple of things involving T. Higgins, but mostly it's Mixon, Chase, and Burrow, as you might expect.
No, of course.
I guess here's a question about the Bengals, and I know, Rob, I'm pretty sure I know what your answer is. If Watson is playing, who's better right now, the Bengals or the Browns?
Well, I would still say that the Browns have a better overall roster than the Bengals, so I wouldn't necessarily lean and say the Bengals are better just because of I might be a fan, but I'm a realistic fan. If anything, I go, too conservative. I don't ever really believe in the team until they show it to me. I still don't like other people knocking them. I'm a fan that way, a classic fan. But I would say if Watson plays, the Browns are top to bottom better than them. Doesn't mean they'll sweep them or anything.
No. I mean, the best, most likely result would be 1-1. But I'm just saying, in general, if Watson were to play the whole season,
yeah. If he's playing the whole season,
who would be favored to have the better record? The Browns.
Yeah, the Browns would be, and that would be proper. They should be favored to have more wins than the Bengals in that circumstance.
What do you think, Mike?
I'm going to lean Bengals because of the receiving core. The receiving core is still significantly better, even with Amari in there. There's not much behind him, and with the rebuilt Bengals line, I'm still going to lean Bengals, but it'll be extremely close.
It's interesting because the Browns are better on the offensive line. They have the better running game. They have the better defense. They have certainly more stars on defense. But and I don't know right now, since we haven't seen Watson play for a year. I don't know who I would take between.
It's really it's pure hypothetical at this point.
That's it. Not as a arrow that I saw in the playoffs versus a guy who's disappeared for 2 years. That's hard to.
Yeah.
Right, but the wide receiver is definitely a big difference. There's a huge difference between having T. Higgins as your number 2 and having Donovan Peoples-Jones as your number 2.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the team that we're projecting to have more wins than the Bengals and the Browns, and that is the resurgent Baltimore Ravens, ladies and gentlemen. This is our favorite to win the division, because so many injuries last year, not to mention losses in close games, all those games where they went for 2 at the end and didn't get the 2 and lost by a point. Don't forget, if you are watching us live, please bring on your comments and questions. Please subscribe to our channel, like the video. Let's talk about the Baltimore Ravens. They are our favorite in the division. They're one of the top 5 or 6 teams in the projections. Of course, they do have the bonus of special teams that they're one of the few teams that's consistently good on special teams. So you can count on that every year. And they have by far the easiest schedule of the AFC North teams. It does get a little bit harder if Watson comes back at midseason, but they get Cleveland. Well, actually, they would play Watson twice because they get Cleveland in week 7 and week 15. So it really matters to them whether Watson's suspension is extended, but not for the entire season. Because if Watson's out for more than 6 games, the next game he misses is against Baltimore.
Yeah. Pretty quiet out of camp. The good news, if you're looking at injuries, of course, rookie center Tyler Linderbaum had an injury that they're still evaluating, and they're going back and forth. That looks kind of significant. But it sounds like a lot of the Ravens are back. A lot of the guys in the secondary are back. With the running backs that matter are back, J.K. Robbins just came back. So if you're worried on the injury front, that seems to be positive news. And, of course, if you look at their draft class,
I would say
if you look at their draft class, it's like 80 guy draft class, and they're all making positive news except Linderbaum being hurt. So there's a lot of encouraging news on that end.
Yeah. They did lose Jakeem Grant, who they brought in, I guess, to that was Cleveland. I'm sorry. We're talking Baltimore. Yeah. The one guy who we're thinking, though, is most important, really, is Ronnie Stanley. And you haven't heard much on his front all off season. I mean, presumably they're thinking cautiously he should be ready week 1, but they thought that last year too. And, he lasted about a quarter and a half or whatever it was. Of all the guys you can sort of, maybe with a couple of exceptions, Marcus Peters, Dobbins, 1 or 2 others, you could round up every other single guy who got hurt on the Ravens, put them all in a bag, and they're still not worth having Ronnie Stanley healthy and being the all-pro Ronnie Stanley that we've come to know and loathe as a Bengal fan for 17 weeks. So he's really the key guy. Yes, they have a lot of smaller level dudes who are back and practicing, and that's obviously good. And their depth is certainly the key to this team. And I think it was tested last year, and that
Peters and Humphrey are pretty important.
I would call the entire secondary.
That quarterback up last year got really bad. Having Peters and Humphrey back healthy is really important. The other thing that I keep hearing from Ravens camp is we believe in our wide receivers. Really, 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 we swear we believe in these guys. really, really believe in them. We totally believe in them. Not just Rashad Bateman. We totally believe in guys who are not Rashad Bateman. These are the receivers we are putting out there on purpose.
Yes.
Exactly.
We believe
this
in
is the
Devin
plan.
Duvernay. We believe in James Proche. We believe in Tylan Wallace. I mean, here's the thing, right? Like, Duvernay is basically just been a special teams guy. Proche hasn't done much in his first couple of years. Tylan Wallace did nothing last year. And then behind them, it's all street free agents.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. The one guy who's made any noise, who they brag about with actually, something behind it, has been Isaiah Likely, yet another tight end, Mark Andrews, clone. So it's sort of like, yeah, we swear these are our wideouts and they're going to be good. We'll show you. But when the proof needs to be displayed in the pudding, so to speak, the one guy who stands out, other than Andrews, obviously, and Bateman to a point, is just another rookie tight end, just what they always do. So, they can say what they want, and they can say Lamar Jackson's put on 20 pounds of muscle and he's throwing the ball harder and looks phenomenal. Everything's, hunky-dory with him too. Listen, we all know what people say in August.
Listen to this Bengals fan. Like, the Ravens, they were 14-2 a couple of years ago.
Listen, I'm terrified of Lamar Jackson. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying what they're saying, and versus the evidence on the practice field that we've seen so far doesn't necessarily match up. But obviously, even when they were beat up, I was terrified of the Ravens. So they're always going to be.
Here's the three things the Ravens always have going for them. Number one, Lamar Jackson is special. Yes. He's a special, interesting player. The arguments that we had a couple weeks ago on Twitter about whether he's one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the league and are we valuing his rushing properly. There's no question he is a different type of quarterback than the rest of the top quarterbacks in the league, but he is one of the top quarterbacks in the league. I will point out the Football Outsiders stats tend to undervalue Jackson because of the fact that when we do rushing, we compare quarterbacks to other quarterbacks. And quarterback rushing is just much more efficient than running back rushing.
Right.
So we're like comparing Jackson to other quarterbacks and going, oh, Jackson's only kind of average as a runner when you compare to other quarterbacks, except that he's running 130 times,
right.
except that he's running so much, and those are all high-value plays, and Ryan Tannehill is running 40 times. So Tannehill might be more efficient, but Jackson is running those high-efficiency plays over and over again. The second thing I'll just point out they have is, look, John Harbaugh is one of the top coaches in the league. When it comes to analytics, when it comes to decision-making, when it comes to a player incentivizing and morale boosting, and he's the top coach. He's one of the top coaches in every imaginable area of coaching. And then the third, which is less of an issue, but like I said, super consistent, is they will always be near the top of the league on special teams every year.
Yeah. And Real Prof says James Proche is showing great. That's what I've heard. But as Aaron said, it sounds like we're really trying hard to be super excited about James Proche. I'd like to see him do more than return punts and stuff.
I feel like this team could use Emmanuel Sanders.
I don't know what Emmanuel Sanders has left. If there was a veteran sitting out there that I was like, yeah, this is the guy. Oh God, thank you, Todd.
Well, there is one. It's Odell Beckham, but
oh yeah.
Well, he won't be back till mid-season, and can Lamar Jackson throw to him outside, right?
I would say one other thing that the Ravens almost always have going for them is the succession game, is the fact that 2020 and 2021's draft picks tend to be good in 2022. They usually are pulling those guys through. I'm cautiously optimistic about a guy like Proche and Duvernay. They're entering their third seasons. When you look at guys like, what's his name? Odafe Owe on the edge, and like he's having a phenomenal game. They always bring these edge rushers through in the course of a 2 or 3 year program. So, like, I anticipate that they're going to get a bump at some of these positions from guys that we've kind of forgotten about because they're second or third year veterans.
Yeah, and they'll need it because that succession plan, that factory, as you put it, it kind of threw a cog last year because that's when they really needed those guys to step up, is when the injuries hit. That's usually been the case. It's not like they haven't had teams that were hit by injuries before, not to that extent, obviously, but they've always had guys go out and the backups were not replacement level. They were decent players, or they held the fort well enough, and then they stepped up when whoever pick your linebacker, edge rusher, whatever safety left in free agency. They always had the guy waiting in the wings, and that's why they used all those picks. You mentioned this huge draft haul they had, and they had 6 fourth-rounders. I mean, ordinarily a team with 6 fourth-round picks trades a couple and boosts the next year's draft, but they used them all, and I think 11 total. And I think a big reason behind that was to restock that cabinet where they can get going with the reserves and have their second team
two corners
up to the level that usually is in Baltimore.
2 corners and 2 tight ends among those 6 fourth-round picks. So they knew we like to go 2 tight end. We need more tight ends. We had no corner depth last year. We need more corners.
Yeah.
And 3 right tackles named Daniel Falele.
It's actually, I believe it or not, it's actually only one human being.
Oh my God! I thought
it looks like 3 guys. It looks like 3 guys.
3 guys sharing a pool tarp with a number on the back.
You can definitely be seen from outer space, no doubt.
So what are our interesting Ravens props that you have, Mike?
Okay, now remember these are all from DraftKings. These are all alternate win totals or the like, so you can play these. I'm not making stuff up. Ravens over 10.5 wins at plus 135. I don't love the plus 135, but over 10.5 wins, you can get the Ravens at plus 135.
If you sort of unconservativize our simulation to bring it back to the sort of range of possibilities that Vegas has, then the Ravens are more at like a 10.1 average wins. So 10.5 at plus 135 sounds like exactly equal value.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a solid bet, as you say. I mean, the payoff I would have thought would be a little better, to be honest. But I think the Ravens, sort of success over the past couple of decades under Harbaugh plays into that, and everybody sort of figures they'll be there. It's not really that wild a bet to see them bouncing back and getting to 11 wins. That seems pretty likely, unless bleep happens as it did last year.
Injuries hit again.
Yeah. I mean, at that low level of payout, I'd rather probably just play the regular number. I don't have the regular number. It's probably around 9.5. I'd probably just hit it. If you are a skeptic, and I don't know who's a skeptic, although Rob was leaning in that direction. Bengals, Ravens under 8.5 at plus 200.
200?
Under 8.5. So, a couple of injuries.
Yeah, but unless Lamar doesn't play a large percentage of the year, even last year with the injury tsunami, they were still right there with 8 wins. So, it's hard for me to envision that unless, as I say, either a total breakdown, which seems unlikely, or Lamar actually being out all or virtually all this season, in which case all bets are off anyway. I would stay away from that one myself.
Yeah, the conservatism of our simulation groups things around 8.5, not lower than 8.5.
Right.
Is the difference in schedules, Joey Sucks asks, is the difference in schedules between the Ravens and the Bengals mostly the difference between the 1st and 4th place schedule? In fact, that's almost all what it is.
Entirety.
Yes.
Yeah.
It just so happens that the 4th place teams that the Ravens play differently from the Bengals are particularly weak. One of them is the New York Giants compared to playing the Dallas Cowboys, which our numbers say is a really big difference. One of them is Denver versus Kansas City, which is not a big difference.
Okay.
And then the other one is Jacksonville,
Yes,
as opposed to Tennessee.
Right.
Which,
so a lot of it is the Giants versus Philly. And a lot of it is
Dallas.
The Giants versus Dallas is a lot of it. And then some of it is the Ravens playing the Bengals, where the Bengals play the Ravens, and the Bengals are projected to be better.
Okay.
But there is also a difference between Jacksonville and Tennessee.
Right.
And there is a difference between Denver and Kansas City.
Right.
Those differences aren't as big as between Philadelphia and the Giants.
Hoping for the extreme rebound in Jacksonville of Trevor Lawrence, at least for that particular week.
For 1 week. For 1 week and
for
only.
1 week and 1 week only. Yeah.
And Real Prophecy mentions David Ojabo might come back midseason, which he might. I'm an Ojabo fan. I like him. That's exactly the kind of player that you usually look at the Ravens and say, we are building for 2023. We get the bonus out of him, but we're going to develop him for the future. And that's a thing the Ravens could do because they had another first-round pick and 4 fourth-rounders and all those other things.
Yeah. Getting a first-round pick for Hollywood Brown still rankles. It's not quite up there with the trade that was nixed, where the Bengals would have gotten Cleveland's second rounder for AJ McCarron, but it's up there.
That would have been one of the all-time. That would have been one of the all-time greats. It really.
Somebody in the league office kiboshed that. There's a huge conspiracy theory in Cincinnati that still exists about how somebody who is a Browns fan in the league office put the slow down on the fax machine or whatever on that particular trade.
It's like in a fantasy league where the commissioner knows somebody's taking advantage of the brother-in-law who doesn't know anything about football and kind of makes the back channel phone call like, look, don't take this trade. Don't take this trade.
Pretend your internet is out for the next half hour. Yeah.
I will say, just to wrap up, because we did Cleveland and Pittsburgh on a different Cleveland and Pittsburgh we still have to do. So we'll get to that.
I haven't done it yet.
It's not tomorrow, is it?
It's not tomorrow.
Okay.
I postponed Cleveland and Pittsburgh till we do more. So we would get it as late as possible. So Deshaun Watson will hopefully know more.
Good.
But when Watson is playing, this is a really good division, right? Yeah. You have the Pittsburgh, who should at least be good on defense. You have the Browns, who have a lot of talent on both sides of the ball. You have the Bengals, who just came off a Super Bowl appearance and still have a good amount of talent, despite the fact that I say that they're a little overrated. And you have the Ravens, who are a really good team. This is a strong division.
It's always been a problem. That's why I've advocated that the Bengals and Colts should have been switched years and years ago. Get out of playing the Ravens.
I guess Cincinnati is to the south of Indianapolis, isn't it?
Yes, very much is. I mean,
although you know what's really to the south of Indianapolis? Miami.
Listen, we're going to adjudicate the
Dallas. If you wanted to just move AFC teams, and all you were concerned about was geography and not historical rivalries, you would put Baltimore in the east, Miami in the south, and Indianapolis in the central. In the north.
And when Peyton Manning was there, that wasn't necessarily something I was advocating, but I always liked the idea of the swap and getting to play the Jags a couple times a year, for example, instead of the Steelers, for God's sakes. But no question, it's a tough division. And listen, that tempers everything around it. People have been asking me, why is the playoff odds this low? Why are they not expected to? The Bengals I'm talking about. Why are they not expected to? Cruise back into the playoffs and make another potential Super Bowl run. And it all starts really with those 6 hard games. I mean, those are difficult games. Win or lose, they take a lot out of the team. And, we've seen this in Cincinnati for forever. The week after they play the Steelers is always a difficult game because of the way they've exhausted themselves or been beat up by Pittsburgh. Same holds for Baltimore to a degree, and now Cleveland has had a whammy on them for the last few years too. So it's not the breather that they had twice a year either. So when you play in a division like this, we can go back to the age-old Tom Brady discussion. Why is he the GOAT? Because he got to waltz into the playoffs every year because the division stank. That's never going to be the case, or at least not for the immediate future for Burrow, Lamar, maybe Deshaun, and whoever emerges in the wake of Ben Roethlisberger's push out onto the ice flow that he is off on. God only knows where he is at the moment. I don't want to speculate. But, yeah, the division's rough, and it's only getting rougher, really.
I will accept your underhanded diss of Darrelle Revis.
I thought I might slip it in there, but you were ready and waiting for it. You're like a cat. Good job.
But certainly, I mean, even if you want to argue that the AFC East was not quite as easy as people think it was for some years, it was never 4 deep.
Right. It was the one contender per division.
Yeah, there was usually one other contender in the other 2 teams.
Yes.
Yeah, the Jets were good for a while.
Pretty much how it was.
Yeah.
You had like one other quarterback.
There were a couple years that Miami was good.
Better than average. Yeah, that was not one of the all-time divisions for sure.
I disagree. Joey Sucks says the division is bad and the top of the AFC as a whole is pretty stacked. I don't think the division is bad. I think this is the second best division in the AFC.
Right. The AFC South is bad.
Right now, if you had to pick 2 teams between the Bengals, the Browns, the Dolphins, and the Patriots, right? Like with Watson playing, you would pick the Bengals and the Browns. You would not pick the 2 AFC East teams.
Even with Brissett
bad
playing,
is
I might pick the Browns.
Yeah. And the top of the, I mean, this is not the AFC West right now, but this is a good.
I was going to say, Joey, my man, I know you didn't mean it as literal there. You had to be doing it in the Michael Jackson sense. Bad isn't good, right?
Real Prophecy says Mitch Trubisky is at the head of the quarterback competition in Pitt. I don't think it matters who's ahead, but we'll get to Pittsburgh in a couple weeks because Rivers McCown will be on, and we'll do Pittsburgh and Cleveland on a show in a couple weeks. Thank you, everybody, for watching today. Thank you to the folks watching live and commenting. Thank you to everyone who listens after the fact on the Football Outsiders Podcast Network. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the show, especially because if you subscribe to the show, you'll know when we switch days on you like this. We will be back tomorrow with Carl Yedor. I believe Carl is making his podcast/live stream debut.
Wow. Good for him.
And we will be discussing the NFC West with the Arizona Cardinals and the San Francisco 49ers. That is tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern, Arizona and San Francisco. Thank you, Rob. Good luck recovering from that appendectomy, both you and Joe Burrow.
Is it right side or left side? I can never remember.
That does it for our show.
We can't tell you.
That does it for our show. We'll see you guys all tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern. So long, everybody.